Chapter 1101. Storage Room. It's not that when something goes wrong, they start to wonder if they don't like their own kind, which will only add to the troubles, and then make the problem between the two sides become bigger and bigger, so that they can't get back at all in the end. After that, after reviewing it, I followed Aruma directly back to the main cabin. At this time, all the members were waiting for him inside, and it wasn't until he pushed the door in that kind of shock was introduced into his heart for the first time. I never knew that there were so many people on this pirate ship, and they can be so imposing when they sit together. This is the first time I think that there will be such emotions between them. Gong Yi, who was sitting on the main seat, had a very serious expression on his face. It can be said that his expression also made him very frightened, but at this time Gong Yi only said one sentence, except for Lan Ying. Tears filled his eyes. Outside the orbit, there is no other action. Remember, no matter whether you are a human or a ghost, whether you have betrayed our pirate group in the future, you will always be the girl among us who needs to be protected the most. Never doubt our knight's loyalty to you. After hearing this, it would be a lie to say that she was not moved. At this moment, Lan Ying's eyes filled with tears, but at the same time there was one thing that was beyond everyone's expectations. What was the reason for Lan Yuxian's actions? Let him go. Why did he use the ability of the four emperor thieves to continuously kill, burn, and plunder in this place? If it wasn't for a few people this time, there is no guarantee that something else will happen. At the same time, he also picked up an item in his hand and placed it on the table. No one knew what was inside, but judging from that exquisitely carved box, it must be an item worthy of collection, otherwise he would not be there. Take it out at this time, but what is inside remains to be discussed. The moment he actually opened the treasure box, the place was full of light. After seeing the contents inside, Gong Yi's expression froze for a while. Maybe he didn't think that he would actually take this thing and take it. Come out. At the same time, there is also a look of doubt. Everyone is facing this treasure box like this. It is obviously a beating heart, which makes Lan Ying suddenly speak. Said this is Lan Yuxian is a precious thing. It is constantly running on the one, and he has never successfully reached the land, or it has flowed into the hands of others, because it is impossible for one ship to stop down, and that ship is on this ocean. The only one that will drive all the time, the original one was also because of the favor of my aunt, so I got this thing, but I have to say that this thing is indeed used, and it is definitely capable of threatening Lan Yuxian. It was successful, but I didn't know how important this thing was to Lan Yuxian. Is it comparable to the other half of its soul? If it is really comparable, then when two souls collide with each other, you will be terminated before now, but you must also understand the truth, things cannot always be the same. So easy, there must be some more. Other episodes happened at this time, just like chickens, some pirates suddenly appeared from the side, that is, at this time, they appeared near and around them. The whole meaning, the pirate ship was surrounded like this. Several people couldn't help looking at each other, as if thinking about whether they should leave this place. But at this time, Gong Yi's face froze for a while, and he looked at the captain of the pirate group opposite. If he guessed correctly, the captain should be someone he knew a few years ago, but because of some entanglement situation. I didn't expect to meet him again in this place. It seems that this time he must also be determined to fight against these people. Since he is the captain, if the other party must start a war, then he must fight. Must not let this group of brothers suffer in this regard. At this time, Aruma and Mayer had already taken out the weapons in their hands, and Mayer's arms had already cooperated very well with him. At least at this time the light was shining, and there was no problem at all. I really didn't expect the famous Gong Yi to meet in this place. You have to know that this is the high seas area. Don't you think you will be arrested with your 700 million worth wandering in this place? After hearing this, Gong Yi smiled softly. Only unsmart people would threaten the issue of his worth. He is also one of the wanted criminals. If he handed him over, he could also do it for himself. Immunity, but only on the premise that the admiral can't catch him, and then hand over this person. Chapter 1102. Robbery. Those of them still abide by this pirate law. After all, they also understand that if they violate the pirate, then the pirates will unscrupulously break such a contract, then the Navy series and living in the port will suffer. Of these people, although there are many pirates who are good people like Gong Yi, this is only a small part. Most of them are just like the captain on the opposite side, doing bad things, or even preempting those. They worked hard to saved half a year of savings. Including, inside the C group, many people lost their lives in such a process. After all, when the pirates were in the shoe factory, if there was a little bit of resistance, basically the young men on the ship would be thrown into the sea. Some of the elderly are left as labor. After all, such people can't escape except work, and it's impossible to have any resistance. As for those, the old, the weak, the sick, and the rest are waiting quietly, many pirates will let them go. Who will sink the ship directly into the bottom of the sea after they have finished moving things. Such people are the most cruel. Gong Yi has always wanted to destroy them all, but after all, there are still very few people who can encounter them. At this time, Gong Yi quickly covered Lan Ying behind him. To know that the 4 emperor thieves were looking for Lan Ying, I don't know why, maybe because of his identity. As one of the 7 ancient weapons, if these pirates get it, it should be used for some special purposes. I don't want everything to develop to such a level, so I must stay to protect him, but at the same time, the captain locked the Lan Ying who was hiding behind him at a glance, and it seemed that he really did guess right. His purpose is well, let's negotiate a condition, anyway. Now that your pirate ship has been surrounded by a dozen or 5 of us, do you think it's very likely? As long as you hand over the little girl behind you, and talk about it. Even if we are willing to escort you to the next port, the admiral can't do anything about our large hull after all. Gong Yi was silent at first, until after he was obedient, he made a quick gesture, and the people around immediately understood that they had already used it. At this time, he hadn't reacted to anything, but Gong Yi had been on the move from the very beginning. No plans to let him know. Anyway, Mayor and Illuma have already made preparations. As long as they give the order, he will definitely fall to the ground. Let's not say anything else. With his own water tricks, basically he can't escape. At sea, he had not planned to find any fleet to provoke, but he did not expect him to come. The man in black has seen it several times himself, and rumors about him have been circulating in the surrounding ports. It is said that he has harmed many people in this place, and even robbed many people of their belongings, making many people unhappy and even displaced. I didn't expect that now that I have met him, there is no problem in doing my best for others. So, when Lumag turned around and called someone to carry things, Gong Yi quickly kicked away the guards on the side, the crew didn't have time to fight back, so they were directly knocked down. Gong Yi and Myers, after looking at each other for a while, he quickly started to fight back. Gong Yi helped him untie the rope in his hand. Mayer picked up the devil's sword and stabbed at the sailors. By the way, he let Gong Yi untangle the ropes on the wrists of the remaining people before turning around. Wiped out more than half. Lumag turned his head quickly when he heard the sound, only to find that a large number of his subordinates collapsed to the ground. At this time, Gong Yi planned to take advantage of the opportunity when Lumag was not paying attention. It's good to solve him. Whoever thought about it, he turned around and instantly made a defensive posture. This hindered his plan, but fortunately, Mayer caught him behind him, and then threw himself to the other side. Gong Yi picked up the ancient artifact transformed by Lan Ying and quickly returned to the battlefield. At this time, Aruma also held his own long sword, and only Yu was protecting Bobo from behind. Bobo also wanted to go up and fight, but how could Gong Yi agree? Yu waited for Bobo to come over in the shade, and after finding that he really couldn't get in, he quickly gave up, and then dodged to Yu's side. 2 people enjoy the shade under the sails. Hearing the screams of the pirates, one by one, they floated into the ears of the 2. After fighting, Gong Yi glanced in the direction of the 2. Originally, he wanted to see if there was any being robbed. Who would have wanted to see 2 people enjoying the shade in that place, and couldn't help but feel dumbfounded. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Read the latest chapter and LT. Chapter 1103. Eyes. At this time, Bobo saw Gong Yi's eyes and returned him a smile, and then Gong Yi once again threw himself into the fight scene. In the middle of it, no one needs to say the tacit understanding during this period, everyone knows what they think of each other. But at the same time, we must understand a truth. Things are not so simple if we want to move the boat with the current. Moreover, at this time, Lumag was dragged into the war, and Gong Yi on the side naturally understood what Lumag wanted to do. It seems that this place is nothing more than to capture nature, and since that's the case, I'll let him go back and forth. Let him experience the feeling of this place. At the same time, Bobo's side is naturally very leisurely. Occasionally, when Aruma's things fall, he will help to pick them up and hand them back, just like a war outside the world. The same people. The 2 of them sat under the sails leisurely. After a fierce fight, Gong Yi was covered in scars, but there was still a lot of blood on Madara. Bobo watched worriedly. After all, if the captain fell down, if so, basically the winner or loser of this war can be seen. But at this time, Lumag seemed to be even worse than Gong Yi. The battle between the 2 sides had only just begun, and Gong Yi rushed forward with the weapon in his hand. At this time, the sword that Lan Ying had transformed also flashed some light. The momentum between the 2 sides, even if he didn't know him, he should be able to see it. A punctuation was drawn. The crew members between the 2 sides are cheering each other on and fighting each other. Although Gong Yi doesn't care much about this aspect, it is of course a good thing to have someone cheering him on, at least in a short period of time. I'm afraid that there is no way to take him, after all, although he is not high in strength compared to Lumag. But at least it doesn't mean that he can't even draw a tie. At this time, Gong Yi also fought against Lumag's skills. He didn't expect that the opponent's samurai sword was still very fluent. It can be said that in a short period of time it is not a simple level to be able to evade the attacks of so many crew members within a short period of time. At this time, a crew member from Lumag's side suddenly rushed up, as if he wanted to attack the same as Gong Yi's attack, but 1. This advantage suddenly changed. Aruma quickly took out his own knife and rushed up. He fought a beautiful cooperative battle with Gong Yi, and directly knocked down the sailors who were attacking from the other side. On the ground. I didn't expect that the other party's crew would do such a dirty thing, but after thinking about it, it's right. Lumag is such a person, how can his successor be any better? At this time, Meyer is also wiping the demon. The cold air emanating from the sword made those Lumag's subordinates shrank their heads. I really didn't expect that. I thought you could achieve anything, but you are just such a person. After hearing this, it made that Lumag feel a little unhappy. I didn't expect that he would use such a tone to question himself, even if it was not good, wouldn't he be better than him? What am I with you? Why, you should take good care of the people under your command. Judging from the way they look, they are probably not good people. Otherwise, how could they rush out in the first instant? They have already made a sneak attack on me. Get ready, this is never expected that the people on your side are so vile. After hearing this, Gong Yi's eyes couldn't help but suddenly widen. If you know that you can say anything, you can only say that they can't. This is the brothers who have been born and died with him, so it doesn't matter when a few people joke around. But if outsiders came at the critical moment, I would never allow them to talk nonsense in this place, so I quickly picked up Lan Ying and rushed up. At this time, Lumag quickly blocked, and then kicked the crewman beside him, who was lying on the ground. At this time, Gong Yi narrowed his eyes and remembered to find a shelter for him. It's not too late, so I told him not to speak. Why didn't he say it when he stepped forward to attack? If it wasn't for Aruma to help him with the blow, he might not be able to see himself now. After so many years he really hasn't made any progress at all, and he doesn't have any skills other than sneak attacks. No wonder the people around the ship court have been criticizing him, and he even thought about speaking for him. At this moment, Gong Yi could not wait to slap his past self, but fortunately, there are always preventive measures, and at this moment Lumag's side is in a hurry, because Illuma and Mayer's combat effectiveness was relatively strong before, that side was badly wounded. Chapter 1104. Injured. If they want to adjust it, it will take some time, but Lumag is still reluctant to bear these on Gong Yi's ship. Supplies, they all want to take them away, then according to the rules of pirates, as long as they can win everything can be taken away, but at this time it seems that they do not have such strength. And even if it can be taken away, the distance between them and the Admiral will be getting shorter and shorter. You must know a pirate group like them. Once the ship stops at this port or in the sea for a period of time and is caught and reported to the Admiral, then it is estimated that they will appear in the Admiral's palace after a period of time. Let's do it, and the Admiral's side is still very optimistic about Gong Yi, hoping to bring him to justice. After all, his name is also very loud. If he really is not in the pirate line, maybe it can prompt more people to return to a normal track. But now it seems to be an unlikely possibility. At least he will not agree for the time being. At the same time, because he has met this person in front of him, I am afraid that such a thing will be put in the future. For a while, Lumag at this time had no fear at all. Just staring straight at the man in front of him. Of course, it's nothing to Gong Yi, how he wants to see a doctor, and then there will be something he regrets, and at this time Lumag also noticed it. The atmosphere is weird, there are many people around him constantly approaching him. Are these people all Gong Yi's subordinates? But no, they are just people drawn by Gong Yi with water. Clothes can become similar to humans, this is what I discovered a few nights ago. That night, Bobo really wanted to be with Aruma, as if he wanted to catch up with the old days or something, but there could be no one on the observation deck, so Gong Yi also made a little man with water and put it next to Bobo. He didn't notice it either, plus Aruma was patrolling it all year round, and his body temperature was relatively low, due to the temperature of the sea breeze. In the company of Aruma, a water man, there was no problem all night, and the other party still slept sweetly. When Aruma came back the next morning, he found that it had turned into a pool of evaporated water. At that time, Aruma knew that Gong Yi had such an ability, and he had practiced it personally. It was nothing more than Gong Yi threw a cock over, and Alu split him, so that in a short time trained Gong Yi's ability inside. Later, after Mayer found out, he took this method to help exercise. The degree of cooperation between himself and the demon has to be said that the tacit understanding between the two of them has really improved a lot in a short period of time. As long as Mayer, if the heart is moved this day, the sword will receive the response, and then follow the action. It's like Mayer's hands are tied by a rope. When he thinks about it, that is, the demons will fly out of his void in illusion, and then help him cut off the rope in his hand. A special skill. In the process of Gong Yi, they accompanied them to train, and it can be considered that they have trained this ability in a short period of time. Now that I meet Lumag, I didn't expect it to be useful. But at the same time, there is one thing that Lumag couldn't understand. Why did so many crew members suddenly appear at this time? Could it be that such a small broken ship can put so many people on it? Gong Yi, how famous is their pirate group? How could there be so many people joining it? At this time, Lumag couldn't understand. Of course, Gong Yi wouldn't tell him the truth. With a secret smile on the side, even Gong Yi's sword glowed. Lan Ying also understood some of the points here, only Bobo and you sat on the side, ignoring what was going on outside the window. I didn't expect that there are so many of you who are not as good as us one-on-one. The winner will be determined by then. If you win, we will quickly evacuate from this place. If we win, all the goods on your ship will be to us, and you will be sailors for a long time under us. At this time, Gong Yi smiled a little. Why did they get so rich rewards after winning, and they just evacuated when they won? If Gong Yi really won this game, they probably want to evacuate the capital. They can't withdraw, as long as they want to, they can remove all the goods on their ship at any time. At this time, Lumag naturally didn't know, he just felt that his suggestion was quite reasonable, but the next second Gong Yi immediately dispatched Mayor, and he didn't have to deal with him. Chapter 1105, Challenge 3rd. This time, that sailor's face couldn't help but flash an embarrassing light. After all, he was fighting at this time, but his own captain, the other party could only see a small scoundrel. At this time, Lumag snorted disdainfully, and then took a step back. There was a person standing behind him. This should be regarded as the most powerful one on their ship. Wouldn't it be easy to beat the little boy in front of him, looking at his thin and frail appearance, at first glance? He didn't even have enough to eat. I didn't expect that Gong Yi was already so poor that he couldn't even pay for the crew's meals, but at this time, there was no need for me to study this. It was solved. I don't fight him. I don't care about his level. If you want to fight, I will fight you. If you can't even pass my level, why would you challenge our boss? After hearing this, Lumag was so stimulated that he didn't expect that an ordinary little person would dare to talk to him like this. It seems that His Majesty has really been lost in recent days. Even an ordinary person would dare to talk to himself like this. So Lumag quickly pulled out his samurai sword and faced the man in front of him like this. I have to say that at this moment, some aura from Meyer's body was enough to make him a little scared. After all, although the devil's sword is not a treasure, it is at least better than the ordinary samurai sword in his hand. I don't know how many times better, so that kind of breath still exists. Between the two swords the crushing is also displayed at once. Lumag used a shop and rushed straight up, quickly waving the samurai sword in his hand in front of him. At this time, Meyer was also able to handle it with ease. Basically what you want to do. This demon was able to react very quickly and gave him a high degree of cooperation. It is actually quite rare to see such a thing, so at this moment Gong Yi was naturally very pleasantly surprised. He had absolutely no problem dealing with it. Then this is enough. Basically, I don't have to worry about what problems will happen to him in the future. After all, it will definitely not be in the short term, and I don't even have the ability to protect myself. And with strengths like Mayer and Alma, there is no problem in protecting the remaining 3 people on board. At this time, there was something wrong with Lumag. Why did this man fight longer and longer, and he would never win? I have to say that at this moment, Mag also needs to examine the gap between himself and Mayer. Why did it suddenly become like this? Why did the boss fight so hard all of a sudden? Wasn't he still able to do it well just now? You dare to say this? I'm not afraid of kicking you out when you go back. The boss has been short-tempered for a day or two. If you talk at this time when she's down, aren't you courting death? At this time, the conversation between the 2 crew members not only spread to Lumag's ears, but even some people in Gong Yi heard it. They suddenly laughed out loud. At this time, Lumag's expression was on his face. Some shy Yuhi's color did not think the gap between himself and him would be so big. This is just a little rookie. I despised him madly just now. I didn't expect you to receive such a situation. The bottle above contains a bottle of juice. It is not difficult to see that the owner attaches great importance to it. Otherwise, how could it be placed in the middle of the belt? After seeing the bottle of juice, Gong Yi's pupils suddenly turned. The time zoomed in. Isn't this the one I saw before? It is. I never thought that I would encounter this bottle of juice in this place. As long as he drinks it, it is estimated that no one will want to leave this time. The ship has only 1 deck, and if he turns into a giant at that time, wouldn't the whole army be destroyed? So Gong Yi immediately, showing off his ability to manipulate water, he quickly pulled the small bottle back with a wave of water. When he was in front of him, Gong Yi stretched out his hand to pick it up. At this time, Lumag turned his eyes to his side, and his eyes were filled with some curious rays of light. He never thought that he would have such a skill. Gong Yi angrily thought about how he could do this. If he really saw some other details, wouldn't he suffer? But the situation was critical at the time, and he couldn't bear to think so much. If he hesitated any longer, he took the juice and turned into a giant. Chapter 1106. Duel. Then don't say it's the person on his ship, don't even want to leave on his side, and always support him. And at this time, Lumag looked at himself with doubts. He probably didn't expect that he would have one such ability. Anyway, at the beginning, this ability was very new to Gong Yi. Aruma and Mayer also asked themselves for a long time how to train this ability. Gong Yi he snickered a little. This was not something he trained himself. This thing itself has an ability, and it is only the thing that he took later, but Lan Yuxian's lack of it is enough to prove that he should have no fate with this thing, otherwise the previous. The voice that guides him will definitely be just like guiding yourself. Drag Lan Yuxian into this world and tell him everything. But it doesn't seem that his character is not worth believing. At this time, Gong Yi also found out that Lan Yuxian was indeed like this. So many annoying things. But I didn't expect that a wicked person like Lumag would actually have some communication with the 4 Emperor Thieves. No wonder he would do such a thing. There must be someone above who supports him, otherwise he would do it so recklessly. Of this long ago, but why did those people ignore Lan Yuxian when he was arrested before? But now he is considered to be free from the 4 Emperor Thieves. He also formed a pirate group. Of course, he was also searching for news about Lan Ying. If he guessed correctly, he should not give up and still want to take Lan Ying back. One of the 7 great weapons of the ancients, but not. You can encounter it wherever you go. I didn't expect you to be such a monster now. At this time, Gong Yi didn't know how to refute it, and Aruma stood up beside him. How come the monsters are just a little strange in their ability to operate, and they are just like you, but they are just trash, and they do such rustling things to the people. One day, you will definitely be condemned, for you pay for all your actions, and when you do this, is there any? What will happen to the testers in the future? Lumag shrugged with an indifferent expression on his face. What does this matter have to do with me? If there is a chance to snatch all their money, I will definitely do it, but now the heat is not enough. It's just, do you still want to be a child? What do you say to me? It seems that your strength is not enough, otherwise, how can he be the only one to stand up when facing a battle? Aluma was already very angry, and Mayer couldn't help smacking his lips at this time. In terms of strength, he was not as good as Aluma. He has been in this industry for many years, and his family had trained him with such abilities before. The way he holds the knife is different from his own, which is enough to prove what kind of person he used to be, but from then on, I can also understand that you basically do everything carefully, nothing more than. His family has cultivated a careful character. But at this time, Lumag's blatant provocation of Aluma was something Meyer didn't expect. I'm afraid this time he doesn't say he wants to run away. It's a 100% matter that the head falls, and the crew behind him can't help but start to pull down, not wanting them to continue fighting. But at this time, the more Lumag was fighting, the more vigorous he seemed to be, and he continued to send out provocative signals to Aruma. At this time, Aruma took his sword and stood up directly from the ground. It's all a bit of a cold vibe. I really didn't expect that someone would be willing to provoke me after so many years. It's really rare. Please help me write down what he looks like and what his name is now. After hearing this, Lumag couldn't help laughing. He really didn't expect that the younger generation is so arrogant, that he would be able to say such words recklessly, thinking that he would make some examples for himself. And say it's time to fight. Since he's here, I have to work hard to deal with him. Anyway, this war is bound to be my own victory. Ma's aura of a ruthless Hades really made Lumag feel a little jealous. Fearing him was also an idea reflected from the bottom of his heart, but it was only a momentary trance. The next second Lumag picked up the samurai's sword in his hand, and was preparing to attack Aluma in front of him. But at this time, Lumag had been knocked to the ground before he could see where the Aruma people had gone. Chapter 1107. This teleportation skill was actually learned from Gong Yi, the one that Gong Yi learned at the beginning. After the water flow technique, some other things were no longer useful, so I simply threw it to Aluma and Mayer, and let them the two go to find out if there is one that suits them. At this time, Aruma just chose another such skill, and he usually has a rather gloomy atmosphere, so it makes people afraid to some extent. After learning a person who improves his art, it becomes even more incredible. Before he can recover, the other party has already sprinted in front of him, and he doesn't even have a chance to resist. I really didn't expect you to be like what Gong Yi said, not an ordinary dish but quite a dish. You don't even have the right gesture of blocking skills, and you still use this katana sword, really embarrassing his founder. After hearing this, Lumag's anger rose up now. This was a skill that was handed over to him by his master back then, although there may be some deviations after he learned it. But it doesn't mean that he can insult himself recklessly, so at this moment, she is still very angry, and even picks up the things in her hand and faces the man in front of her. At this time, Gong Yi is not afraid at all. Yes, and Aruma is not afraid. Because he knows that there is Gong Yi behind him as a support, he will definitely not let himself have an accident, and this man provokes first. The most important thing is his way of robbing other people's pirate ships at sea, which is inherently wrong. After hearing about what happened to the killers around her recently, she became even more resentful. The intertwining of the two made Aruma angry all of a sudden, and Gong Yi also found out that Aruma seemed to be a little bit crazy, so he quickly ordered him to stop the attack in his hand. At this time, Aruma suddenly reacted, and why did he suddenly follow his words just now? How I do it has nothing to do with you, please take care of yourself. Rumag's answer can be useful, and it can't even pose any threat to several people at this moment, but at this time he feels that he is very glorious, a thing worth showing off, and Aruma doesn't want to be with him. What nonsense, I just want to quickly resolve this unknown fight. Why don't you reason with me? You are very tongue-in-cheek. You want to discuss with me how to use this samurai sword. I didn't expect that you, an ordinary subordinate, would dare to tell me how to use the sword. Perseverance. At this time, Gong Yi was on the side, and rushed forward and waved the blue cherry to separate the distance between the two. At this time, Aruma didn't react yet, what Gong Yi was going to do, but Gong Yi went up but he looked impatient. At this time, Aruma had basically confirmed it, and he should have hated him all the time, as this place nonsense. What is the function of the samurai sword? I really don't know how to use it. I don't know, but the only thing I understand is that his skills are really poor. Aruma used his movements to block the person back in 2 strokes. At this time, Lumag was still in a fog. At this moment, Lumag suddenly stood up again and rushed in the direction of Aruma. Every time he jumped over and fell down, it took a lot of time to go back and forth. Aruma was unwilling to even deal with him, but sat aside to rest. At this time, Lumag was not too embarrassed to launch an attack. Unexpectedly, the so-called captain couldn't even match Aluma's score, and he was barely tied with Mayor, but after getting here, it became it's worthless, maybe the crew members around didn't even think of it. At this time, the more Gong Yi looked at Aluma, the more powerful he became. There was no mistake in recruiting her into the pirate group at first. Not only did he add a great power, but even the connected problems could be helped to settle. This is a rare genius, but at the same time, there are some other things for me to pay attention to. Just like the person in front of me, my aunt has prepared all the possibilities before she arrives. This today. But at the same time, Aruma did not immediately after subduing the laundry detergent. Pushing him to the ground, he did not arrest him, but secretly observed whether he had anything. The other tricks inside were not used. After all, according to some of the rumors of those people, it is not difficult to hear that Lumag should be a person who does evil. If there is a chance of victory, even if it is opportunistic, he will do it. Chapter 1108. Arrest. So at this moment, Aruma was a precaution. As expected, at the moment when he turned his head, Rumag actually took out the bottle of juice that was transferred just now. I didn't expect that she still had it the second bottle, this time Aruma saw that. The bottle knew it was very familiar. You know that it must not be a good thing, otherwise, how could it be taken out at a critical moment that cannot be beaten? So he didn't even think about it, he immediately. With his own body, and directly knocked the bottle of juice in his hand into the air. But Aruma fell directly into the sea with Lumag because the force between the two was too great. It was Gongyi who took them together, and all the people on Lumag were pulled away immediately. Ordered Mayor and a few others to pick up those nets and everything, and then bring Aruma up. At this time, I didn't expect that before falling in, Lumag didn't forget to grab Aruma's trousers tightly, and just came up with him. At this time, Gongyi also had another plan in mind. After they were salvaged, both of them were in a coma. At this time, Gongyi directly imprisoned his subordinates. The crew members were still shouting, as if saying that Gongyi is not loyalty. But when they came to rob their pirate ship, they didn't ask themselves if you mind these things, then you don't need to ask them at this time, not to mention that you just handed over Lumag alone. They didn't plan to put all of them into the sea like this, so what are they worried about? Since you are so loyal, I will give you a chance and choose to give Lumag to us, or you can stay. You can only choose one of these two. At this time, it can be summed up in one sentence. People died for wealth, and birds died for food. The crew quickly shook their heads and decided to throw Lumag here at Gongyi, and then the pirate ships they quickly opened left this place. Gongyi looked at Lumag who was lying on the deck at this time, and then asked Aruma and Mayor to take him down and lock him up, and then return to the Admiral's time to hand him over. Of course Gongyi also played a trick. The only one who wasn't wanted was Aruma, charging to hand over Lumag. Then I got some bounty by the way. I am sure about the next journey. Aruma nodded without saying anything. When I went to the Admiral's building, I went directly to the front to register, wanting to see the final one. Boss, as expected, that person has been waiting for Lumag for a long time. Recently, I have also noticed the news that he is doing something wrong, so I have already wanted to arrest someone, but because the other party has 5 pirate ships. If they were to arrest him out of thin air, I am afraid that they would have been beaten badly before they approached that place. Therefore, everyone in the Navy has never come up with a feasible plan. Someone brought him to the door. I picked it up by accident that day, as if he had sunk in the water. I don't know if it was because of internal disputes or what kind of reasons, anyway. I also saw the report that he wanted him when he was sent here. I hope you can keep your promise and give me the money. After hearing this, the person headed by the Admiral of the Navy quickly asked his subordinates to get him money. After a while, that person hurriedly brought a box of money over. Aruma saw when I got to this full box, I couldn't help but widen my eyes. It seemed that something was impossible. I believe it. But at this time, the Admiral next to him suddenly laughed, and then stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, you can hold this money safely. As long as someone robs you, come back and tell me that this is the money you deserve to send us to the South China Sea. If anyone dares to hold you, you can report it to the Admiral of the Navy. I asked him to come to the headquarters to find me. If there is a good opportunity like this next time, please do so immediately. Notify me. If you go to get a thief like Gongyi in the future, please also say hello to me. I promise to arrive at the scene as soon as possible. This is a signal, but as long as you launch it, I will immediately appeared at the scene. Got this flare gun. After that, Aruma squinted his eyes, although it is indeed a dangerous item with him, but it is inevitable that he can shoot when he is in danger in the future. This way, everyone knows that their backer is the Admiral of the Navy. Although the other party has not admitted it, there is no way. For me, I don't have so much time to grind in this place. Anyway, he actually used the signal gun. Give it to yourself, then as to what to do with this gun, it's up to you to decide. Chapter 1109, Calculation 3rd. After he went back, Aruma bought the gun, stuffed it into my arms, then handed the box of money to Lan Ying, who quickly counted the money, and put them in separate pockets inside a locker contract. At this time, Gongyi was the signal gun he was studying. Aruma took a step forward and told him what happened just now. At this time, Gongyi didn't. The corners of his mouth twitched, and it seemed that he was worthy of himself. Everyone in his subordinates has a brain, and Aruma's idea is very good. If you encounter a villain like Lumag in the future, you can take precautions. And I won't go there recently. Lan Yuxian just disappeared like this, and the 4 Emperor Thieves site is definitely still there, searching for Nang's whereabouts. In order to keep it from falling into the hands of the bad guys, a few people have to prevent it. But this admiral is undoubtedly their biggest supporter. After all, that site is still very supportive of such an action. If they are sure to know what the bullets fired by this flare gun look like, then they can use this test. At that time, as long as those people come, let Gong Yi and everyone else come. People can evacuate. Leaving Nayan and Aruma alone, it happened that Aruma was not seen through this time, but in fact, the situation it was different. Lumag in that cell woke up at this time, and felt that the ground was very cold, and then the surrounding environment was not that kind of fresh sea breeze, so at this time he quickly sat up from the bed, but found himself in a cell. The hand and foot fetters were all on it, and there was no intention of letting him escape at all. I didn't expect you to wake up so quickly. Did you cause trouble in the coastal area recently? I didn't expect someone to bring you here. I thought you would be brought to justice. In the past few months, your captains are really good. Each of them can reach 100 knots, so this time we should count the previous ones. The old account and the last time you robbed so many people away in my prison. When he heard this, Lumag immediately hung up with the admiral in front of him with a smile on his face. After all, it was completely unexpected this time, but it was impossible for his crew to save him because he couldn't beat him. Leave it to them, the killer is the cannon on the ship. As long as they have the ability to blow the other's ship to ashes, then this matter is not after all. But what he didn't actually know was that when disaster strikes, they will fly separately. Although those crew members really want to save him and get the boss back, at the same time they are even more reluctant to those ships. They must know that those ships are their lifeblood. But they got it after so many hard work, and once there is no Lumag, they can sell these boats and live a very ordinary happy life, and it can be said that they are much richer than ordinary people. Therefore, a few people fled in a hurry. After the admiral had tossed Lumag up and down, he put these. The so-called confessions were recorded, so Lumag was put on the air again. Back in that cell. At this time, Lumag was still angrily thinking about who sent him to this place. After inquiring with the people next to him, he found that all the descriptions were exactly the same as Aruma. I didn't expect that. Eri the man even showed a kind and hilarious expression to others, and it seemed that this time it was indeed beyond his expectations. If I could have noticed this earlier and dealt with Gong Yi, it would be easy to handle, but in fact, I didn't expect it to be a pain in the dark, but now it seems that this is not difficult, and I want to get rid of it. To escape from this place, just get in touch with that person. But at the same time, before thinking about it, Lumag shouted at the guard. That person is the real pirate. You all caught the wrong person, although I did some bad things, but I won't be imprisoned. He is the real person who works under Gong Yi. If you don't believe me, you can bring him back and torture him and interrogate him. At this time, a few people around couldn't help but think he was crazy. After all, how could an ordinary passerby provoke her? If she had to bring her back and torture her, wouldn't this hurt him? Some other little ideas that let others think of their admiral, so a few people didn't pay much attention to him, but bypassed her like this, not even a single extra glance. As he continued to grow, the guards of those admirals even took electric batons and gave Lumag an electric shock. It just so happened that under Lumag was those. Water slowly poured in, except for, as long as you get out of the bed, you'll be in the water. Chapter 1110, Circulation. In such an endless cycle of cold water immersion, this also made Lumag very desperate, feeling that everything around him had nothing to do with him, and no one would come to save her. But it wasn't until a voice resounded in his ears that Lumag realized that he didn't expect an old man to be locked at the other end of the cell. Could he be the mysterious person in this place? Among the prison cells, there is a person who is familiar with astronomy and geography. Even as long as you give him the reward he wants, he can take you to escape from the Admiral's cell, but he will still return to that place. It is said that that is his protection. Power. As long as he leaves the Admiral's building, some people will come to trouble him, so this place is also an umbrella for him. But Lumag created such a rumor, but he didn't know if this was the person he was looking for. After seeing his face clearly, Lumag became more convinced of his thoughts. The appearance is not very clear, and even if you take a closer look, you can find that the facial features are not coordinated. This person happened to be the same. I didn't expect that I would be bumped into by myself. This person is not a faceless monster, but his appearance is a little strange, but he has always been regarded as an ominous omen. So no matter where he goes, he is not popular. Several decent pirate groups were formed before, but because of his appearance as an ominous feature, they were all extinguished by everyone, so thereafter that, he no longer started such a journey, and no longer formed any so-called pirate group. Forced to take this path because of being implicated by him, but what can be done? If I can save him, I will definitely lend a helping hand, but I am just a how can an ordinary mortal face this matter? I believe you have heard rumors about me. I have no hobbies, I just have some ideas. As long as you can meet my requirements, do and say yes. If you want to escape from this place, even if you just want to take revenge on the person in your heart, I can help you complete it step by step, or you can try it. After hearing this, for Lumag, the temptation is naturally, if he didn't say this, but said something else, he might not have any interest in himself, but only this point, but I have a lot to say. So at this moment, Lu told him all the things he had, and the man squeaked. After a whimper, he chose something that was suitable for him, so he asked him for it. At this time, Lumag didn't think too much. After taking out something like that from his arms, he threw it directly, and he didn't think that the other party would have some bad thoughts about him. But when he gave it to him, Lumag was still suspicious. He glanced at him and felt that he was just a fool in a space. How could he be able to stay away from this place? I don't believe him. After all, this thing is definitely something that ordinary people can do. How can I say that he is like this? The current situation makes me feel that it is not so easy to be trusted, but after receiving that thing, the man's eyes quickly changed to it, a fiery state, it's a kind of blue-violet eyes, and no one knows why. But it couldn't be seen that at this time, Lumag should have been caught. After all, this is his current situation. His eyes are staring aimlessly at this place in the air. In fact, the reason why his brain didn't send a signal to the body was because there were two souls constantly fighting in the body. Because of his desire to take revenge on Gong Yi, Lumag slowly supported him in that. The soul kept on fighting. Of confrontation. But if the man in black didn't have a huge hatred, he wouldn't be locked up in the place of the Admiral. The two souls who wanted revenge were entangled in this way, and suddenly the man in black opened a distance from him. After all, this place is the home of Lumag. All the conditions can be changed by it. If I fight him in this place, it will be a big loss, so I try to ask him if I can stop it, and I can use another method to solve it. At this time, Lumag naturally also stopped, but at this critical moment, the man in black quickly turned his soul into a small dot, and rushed directly in his direction, hitting Luma with one blow. The middle part of the soul of the grid was successfully scattered, but in fact the man in black still knew very well that his soul would recover within 2 or 3 days. Chapter 1111. Innocent first. After all, he himself is not clear about this matter, but he can still see it. There are always some inexplicable things happening, and now he is not waiting for such an opportunity. At the same time, Gong Yi also I discovered another point. That is, after I left with Aruma, the Admiral of the Navy. There was a wave of aura from the cell, which can only be detected after the water art. This should be mutual kinds of spells resonate with each other only after they are cast. But at this time, Gong Yi didn't take it to heart. Someone in the Admiral's cell helped to worry about it. He had already sent Lumag in this matter, so the next thing had nothing to do with him. The individual took the money and went to the nearby port to buy some things. At this time, a Navy admiral who had just received Aruma saw him. So he put his arm directly on his neck. At this time, the two of them walked outside like that. Gong Yi squinted his eyes from behind at this time, as if he wanted to take a certain action, but only at this time could Ruma make a gesture to show that this person is innocent, but it was only because he had just gotten acquainted with him that he came to strike up a conversation. After all, if that person can't be caught, they will be able to get a promotion and a salary increase, and they must be very happy. So it is reasonable to meet Aruma again and show some good behaviors. There is no need to make things so rigid. Once he kills him, I am afraid Gong Yi's worth will rise again, and he said maybe he will also get involved in this big trouble. The innocence is still quite good, at least after seeing a few of them eliminated. I feel that this matter is also good, and last time because a few of them were wanted prisoners, but I was not, so I said that in the cell, they deliberately took more care of themselves. Isn't it enough to prove something? But it's the only thing that made Aruma hard to fall in love with. It was the previous incident, some behaviors that Lan Yuxian did, and it's some of the thoughts that followed were enough to shock me. Could catch it, it was time for Lumag. I have to say that it was a timely time for this person to be brought up. Anyway, some resources in the cabin are already gone. At this time, there is no problem in encountering pirates and robbery. After all, there will be no shortage of things to cope with. Thank you very much today. If it was you, I'm afraid we will have to wait for a while, and we will be reprimanded by our superiors every once in a while. It's nothing, it's just a labor. If it wasn't for the wanted news you posted, how could I help to do such a thing and get the money for no reason? In fact, I'm sorry now, but the situation at home is very urgent, and I have to go back quickly, or I'm afraid it will be too late for my mother to call a doctor. After hearing this, the kid quickly let go of his arm, and then pushed it on quickly. He told him to go quickly. Everyone has relatives in the house, not to mention them. Seeing this scene, cannot help but let Aruma be moved by it, but there is no way, he still knows his mission. As a member of the pirate group, I can't have any sympathy for these crew members. Maybe the next victim is myself. Don't talk about sympathy at that time. I am afraid that the rest will be gone, but for his sake psychologically oriented, Aruma quickly slips out of his control. Then it became regular. At this time, Gong Yi looked at Aruma's performance and it was a little strange. Aruma thought for a while in the past 2 days. Could it be that he did something extreme just now? Otherwise, how could he suddenly he looked at himself like this? But then Aruma just smiled, then stepped forward and handed him the things he had just purchased. Because of Gong Yi's identity, after docking at the port, he generally does not dare to go to the market. People with relatively low value such as Lan Ying and Mayer, of course, sometimes go on their own, but it is rare. After all, it is a matter of life and death. Who would joke about this? I thought you were familiar with them, so you shouldn't come back. After all, the system over there is much better than ours, and since it's your first time joining the group, I'm not too worried. You. Don't worry, if I were the head of the child's regiment, I would think the same way. After all, everyone is not qualified to be believed without any reason. The real thing is to be won by themselves. After hearing this, Gong Yi nodded with satisfaction, and then left at random. Aruma breathed a sigh of relief and didn't say anything more. Chapter 1112, Handover. After following his footsteps and getting on the boat, I saw that Mayer was looking around at that place. He was the most anxious without him during this trip, and he must have been homesick. It is said that the destination of this trip seems to be able to pass by him. No wonder I was looking forward to it at this time. Seeing this scene, Gong Yi couldn't help but laugh a little. People who are homesick really have the most pure minds. Just looking at his eyes can tell what he is thinking. Lan Ying on the side teases Bobo, and the two personally always play on the side. I have to say, no matter what Bobo becomes, he is a member of this pirate group. How are you two coming back? The handover went smoothly. I got the money, and I bought some things needed on the ship. Basically, I can set off. I always feel that they suspect me a little, or that Lumag seems to be planning to reveal something. After hearing this, Gong Yi's face froze for a while, and then he quickly ordered the ship to sail. As expected, it was exactly the same as what Aruma said. The moment these people left the port, the admiral behind he even chased after him. At this time, Gong Yi gave Aruma a deep look. He didn't expect this kid to have a strong observation ability. If that's the case, I don't mind putting it within the scope of protection, and the incident on the small island before made me have a series of trust in him. After all, there were only 2 people left at that time, but he was able to stick to the last line of defense, which also surprised him, and now that this series of changes has occurred, how can he not believe it? Lan Ying pressed Aruma under the table and did not let him probe, which made Aruma's heart warm. After all, she is still a protected identity, a clean and uncontaminated. I really didn't expect Lan Ying to be able to consider this range, but I was a little flattered, but at this time, Lan Ying gave him a gesture from her subordinates, which made me feel a little dumbfounded. I thought he suddenly thought of it. I want to imply that I let myself do it. Whoever thought that it was just to show off his reaction speed, and he really made himself have some things that he couldn't understand at once, but at this moment, it is not difficult to see that all the manpower around him are protecting him, just like them. Put yourself in a circle and place it in the center of this place. Nothing more than, I don't want him to get to know him. I really didn't expect that one day I would be able to get such treatment. It would be considered a death without regrets. Here's a meal, roar. Have you kidnapped an ordinary person in your bed? I'll give you 10 minutes to quickly put the person down, and I'll let you leave the port directly, and I won't hold you accountable this time. You must know that he is innocent. How can this be? After hearing this, the few people couldn't hold back and laughed directly. Even Aruma squatted under the deck with a helpless expression. It wasn't his fault. I think they really believed their identities, but they were brought here because they were kidnapped. Indeed, the scene just now was more similar. After all, when Aruma and Gong Yi faced off against each other, it looked more like Gong Yi was threatening Aruma to let him get on the boat together, because Rumag had mentioned a mouthful of Aruma before, which was not really ordinary man. He is a member of a pirate group. That's why the man paid more attention. He didn't expect that all this was due to seeing a shocking secret. Someone took her away. Just after she came out of the Admiral's men, she was directly held on board by the crew of the pirates. This is simply the greatest insult to them. It's not certain whether he's on board or not. How can you be so sure? At this time, that Admiral couldn't help but jumped his feet in anger, and after stomping his feet, he rushed up quickly with a face of unwillingness. At this time, Gong Yi immediately. He raised a gun and aimed it at him. If he didn't aim at this time, he would be a fool, and he charged straight at him. There must be some not so pure purpose. But the other party didn't. He just wanted to take that person back. Gong Yi really didn't know that these people's minds were so pure, and they seemed so easy to deceive. No wonder he was basically able to succeed this time. Even if we rob it, so what if you want to go back? Will he go with you? You don't think about living a life as cured as an admiral, and on the other hand, we can do anything with our reckless abandon. If you think normal people, you will which one to choose. He is not stupid, who would want to be restricted to freedom. It is better to be free than. Chapter 1113. Gong Yi on the deck, and his eyes revealed some sharpness. He didn't expect that a fugitive would dare to speak to him like this. Where does the majesty of an admiral come from? But no one cared what kind of people everyone was. Only know that they have the power to catch pirates. But when these pirates really have a group of people to gather for rescue, they can't actually stop it. It's just an organization on the surface, and they want to take their own position. He was so arrogant, so at this moment, Gong Yi was actually quite unconvinced. The two just looked at each other like this, and neither of them said anything in advance. Isn't this condition not enough to tempt you? I've already promised to let you go. As long as you keep him, we can talk about everything. Look at this, anyway. In the end, you're nothing but an ocean. I'm just the leader of the thief group. Since I have such power, I will definitely be able to let you carry out the rest of the things successfully, you see. Gong Yi, who was silent, didn't speak. At this time, Aruma's figure hiding under the deck couldn't help but feel a little nervous. If he really agreed, then he would definitely regret going on board with him, but at this time Gong Yi suddenly he chuckled lightly in between, the curvature of the corners of his mouth rising just right. Be the image of a beautiful man. At this time, Lan Ying couldn't help but feel a little tempted. After all, I haven't seen Gong Yi laugh like this for a long time. Idea, or to directly confront others. Otherwise, this guy wouldn't show such a thing, and Meyer on the side looked like he was watching a good show. Aluma didn't know why some people had fear on their faces, while others looked like they were watching a good show. She will know in the next second. At this moment, Gong Yi threw something from the deck, and those admirals immediately surrounded by it. You might think that's Aruma. It's just a sack with some garbage-like things in it. After all, it was just picked up from the kitchen. I didn't expect to be able to act as Aruma. When they were thrown down, those people quickly surrounded them, and the admiral who just caught up with the led by just looking at Gong Yi across the sea, and then inside his eyes he revealed a hint of pride, but he didn't expect that Gong Yi, who is worth 700 million in the legend, would also threaten him. This is not the boss. Did he admit his mistake? If so, how can we go back to work? I just got it, and this kind of person was taken away like this. Yeah, the boss has issued the final wanted order that day. If we can't catch him and send him back within 7 days, I'm afraid there will be a big change in the place above. It is said that it has not been arrested for a long time. To a useful person. I couldn't help but make this person feel a little irritable, and then wave their hands to tell them not to continue talking. Those people also closed their mouths very interestingly. As if wanting to say something, the man's eyes quickly lost the past. Then the other party closed his mouth. Gong Yi couldn't help but snorted when he saw this scene. The legendary righteous admiral is nothing but a group of people in the guise of justice. The real ones are probably in sheep's clothing. The wolf, if they hand over Aruma this time, it is estimated that they will definitely torture Aruma. Asked about his own news or his future route, if he said he didn't know, he should be like that. Rumag who entered, but at this time Lumag had already found another person. It is said that this prison cell the most secretive of them all. He can be familiar with a person's past and future, and these lunatics around him are all people who make deals with him. In the end, because he couldn't stand the consequences, he collapsed and died. Some of them were crazy all their lives, because they couldn't accept it after listening to his prophecy. At this time, Lumag didn't know whether he would succeed or not, but after all, things were already in front of him, and he couldn't do it if he didn't do it. It's definitely going to be tough. But at the same time, Gong Yi also discovered another curious thing, that is, Lumag did not keep up. It seems that these admirals are still in the process of detaining him. I really didn't expect him to have today. I thought he was as strong and boastful as he was. Why don't you say that the Navy's head of the house, his friends don't know why didn't come to him? It seems that it is just a hand, it is nothing to say, usually kill plundering, etc. It's so bad, if it were him, he wouldn't be able to save him. Chapter 1114, Departure. If there is no Lumag, those crew members can do other things to relax them, which is much better than following this man step by step, but at this time, Gong Yi remembered she on that small island. Blue, a group of people. If I can get in touch with them this time, it might be a good thing, but I don't know how to deal with it. After all, he had already agreed. Mayer wanted to take her home first. At this time, Mayer climbed to the deck and chatted with Gong Yi about the place in his house. It was a small island in the middle of the sea. It is very graceful and beautiful, but I don't know since when, this small island has completely changed. Then it wasn't as good as it was back then. No one knew why, not even himself, but she had no choice but to leave the island. Her mother and father turned their backs on the eyes of all the villagers. He was tied to a small boat and sent away. Before leaving, he could also see a fire burning in the village. At this time, he couldn't help but feel discouraged. Going back to sea it was just to realize a dream for himself, to make himself firm, but they didn't. To die is just to fall asleep somewhere. Isn't this situation much better than that? But sometimes deceiving oneself is just a play, but sometimes there is no way, except deceiving oneself. Oneself is not thought there was somewhere to bring them all back to life. You said that if you had another chance, would you choose to take all of them away with you? At this time, Gong Yi was silent for a while, and looked at Mayer who was on the side, trying to confirm whether he was asking himself, or whether he was asking his own heart. After all, there was a big difference between the two, but seeing him Gong Yi was silent for a moment when he looked at himself with light in his eyes. Then if you want to do this, we may rent another ship, otherwise this one will not be able to take them away successfully, and you must also know that pirate ships also have a limit on the number of people, otherwise they will be engulfed at sea. I don't believe you don't know this legend. At this time, Gong Yi smiled lightly. He didn't care. It was precisely because he knew about this matter that he was the only one who left. Because the boat was small, there was only one person that could carry it. Of himself, he was successfully selected. Maybe there are many new lives on that small island. I feel that after I appear, everyone will look at me with a special look. I do and know, they all seem to be different from me in my impression. I am not from that place. I am just adopted. Don't you know what it looks like when you see it? But no one thought that when they were on this road, they were suddenly stopped by a thunderstorm. I have to say that this wind and rain was really violent. Early in the morning, the weather was very clear and there was no problem, but when it was almost noon, it was windy and rainy. It can be said that the weather with thunderstorms was exposed at this moment. In such weather, it is better to choose a place to rest first. But at this time, several people disagreed. After all, there is no land nearby. If you want to stop, it is estimated that there will be a big problem, but at this time, Gong Yi insisted on ordering to find a land. Maybe what other opportunities will there be? But the surrounding roads had to be cleared. Gong Yi happened to have the ability to control the water. It could be considered that the security office was dangerously escorting the pirate ship to the place where everyone was lying on the deck panting. Some people pull the sails, and some people help turn the rudder. It can be said that they were all in a very busy atmosphere. Only Gong Yi raised his hands and faced Wang Yanghai behind him to face the danger. All the people followed his instructions and walked slowly. Finally, it's driving the boat out of such a hellish place. At this time, Lan Ying suddenly ran over from the other end and asked if he had found anything special about the island. At this time, Gong Yi sat up and looked at the island for real. There was nothing on it. No, it's just a strange atmosphere. It can be said that something must have stayed in this place, but this Shishi festival has a lot of likes of Mayer's demon sword, so Gong Yi got up and took 2 steps, pulling Mayer from the ground. This place is the same as your sword's breath, could it be your home? Chapter 1115, Destroy. After hearing this, he was really shocked. He quickly turned his head to look at the cave. Yes, this breath is the same as the one on the devil's sword, but why is it so dilapidated? Although I remember it, there is a big fire burning in this place, but it does not mean that everything will turn into ashes. This is really beyond the scope of my own expectations. Where is the deviation? Or are they coming? The place is wrong. Maybe the place is wrong. Although the atmosphere is the same, I have no impression of this place. I only remember that when I left, there was a big fire, but I can vaguely see the outline. It doesn't seem to be where I lived. After hearing this, Gong Yi naturally has no other emotions than doubts. After all, this is where he lives, but now I find that the two places don't match, and this doesn't seem to be what he used to be. Everyone was surprised at the place where they stayed. After all, some of the atmosphere revealed by this place still made people feel very strange. Burnt place in front of it, it reveals that it has a special retro atmosphere. It should be a place back then, but why did Mayer keep denying it? Everyone in this world can't understand, including Mayer himself. He doesn't know why, but there is always a voice in his heart telling him, hurry up and leave this place, otherwise there will be bigger incidents. Is not the same. So after waiting for him for a while, Mayor quietly turned Gong Yi aside, and explained to him everything that the voice in his mind just said, and he didn't know what he was talking about, that is intermittent, but the only thing that can be heard continuously is to let him leave this place quickly and not stay any longer. It was Gong Yi who called all the people together, and everyone sat here to come up with ideas. The number of people is powerful. This is true. After synthesizing what everyone said, Aruma can also be considered to propose a more comprehensive opinion. Stay in this place for a while, a boat as soon as the weather improves. Set foot on the road and left this place, but no one thought that they would come in such a hurry at this time, saying that Bobo was gone. Slow down, what's the matter, tell me. Just now when I went to help Bobo to find something, I turned around and found that she was gone. When I saw him, I ran towards the inside of this cave, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't say that just now. Is this place dangerous? I won't look back no matter what I call him. Hearing this, Gong Yi frowned. If he guessed correctly, he must have been caught on his body, or something called his mind. When I was on that island, I was like this. Bo was called away by the village chief, but now that he has left the place, how could such a situation still occur? He remembered something, and when he saw his expression, he found that his face was pale. Yes, I remembered, this place is indeed my hometown, but many years ago, when I was sent away, there was actually a traitor in the village, and a fire started because of the fire he set. In the end, no one survived, and when I was watching from a distance, I also saw such a tragedy. At this time, all the ruins and fires, the signs after that can be completely seen through, but at this time, Gong Yi is also very incomprehensible. If this is the case, why haven't I remembered it for so many years? A memory. What is Anne's mind? And Mayor has now found this demon sword. Is it for him to bring this sword back to this place? These are Gong Yi. Naturally, it is not clear. It is itself, it belongs to his family, but Mayor seems to be ignorant. After a few people's deliberation, let Lanying and Mayor stay on the periphery, while Aruma and Gong Yi are going to step into the place. The cave looks for Bobo. After all, Mayor is the heir of this place. If he leaves rashly, it may bring big trouble to other people. After entering the cave, if the people inside are hostile to him, wouldn't it be bad this time? And I don't know what Bobo thinks. Yes, this is the first time I rushed in without listening to the command. Could it be that I have a problem? There is not necessarily anything that can tempt the waves on this small island, and it is different from that small village, there with his relatives. Is there some distribution in this place? This really makes me puzzled. Chapter 1116. Weird. The connection of these few things makes people feel a little weird, but Mayor is a little unwilling. After all, this place is also his hometown, and he wants to go in with him. But Gong Yi resolutely refused. If the cave collapses, then Mayor may not even see the last of his family, which he will definitely not agree with. After being decisively rejected, Mayor I was also discouraged, and didn't say anything more and hid aside. Trust me, I'll take them out together, but you really can't go in. I'm afraid that when something goes wrong, you won't be able to explain it, and you are the only heir of this place. If we have you, we can still rely on get you out of this place. Hearing this, Mayor didn't refute, and just sat there obediently, which surprised Gong Yi. Generally, he is not someone he likes. How could such a situation be possible? Make yourself satisfied. It is much better for him to wait for him in this place than to run after him. Otherwise, things will be out of control at that time, so what will he use to compensate? After Aruma and Gong Yi are ready, they will start from there. Entrance to the cave. Go in. Mayor also got up at this time. Lanying saw this scene on the side, quickly got up and chased after him, and then stopped him. At this time, Mayor squinted at that, and the other party just held his hand sideways and did not let him leave. After all, this was what Gong Yi had instructed before. The first task that he had to do in this place was to protect him. Don't let him leave this cave, and don't let him go to that place. It is definitely safe to be guarding around this ship. The reason for this trip is to let her see her family. It is not a normal thing to let him die first. At this time, Mayer also knew what Lan Ying wanted to do, so he yelled at him fiercely. At this time, Lan Ying still didn't react. When he really came back to his senses, Mayer's people were gone, and even the devil's sword had been taken away. It seemed that he was going to die. Lan Ying stomped and circled over there, not knowing how to deal with it, so I simply squeezed into the cave. When Mayer went in, the whole person was the same. There was nothing in it. It could be said that it was a place that was completely different from what he thought, but there was no way to do it, and he definitely couldn't think about it in a short time. For another method, contact Gong Yi and the others. If you let her know that she followed him in, I'm afraid something will happen again. The last time was enough to make him dissatisfied, and this place was on fire, and I don't know what will happen. Anyway, there must have been a lot of grievances at that time. As expected, after taking 2 steps forward, there was a faint fire coming from there, but it was not difficult to see that it was definitely not Gong Yi, if they were Gong Yi and Aruma. The light at this time should be technical, and it is constantly on. At this time, there was no response from the other party. It can be judged that this will definitely not be for them, but there are some other possibilities. After all, I also discovered Gong Yi during this period of time, and they seem to have some strange, it's like hiding something from yourself. As Gong Yi you. But there was no echo there, the light suddenly flashed twice. At this time, Mayer naturally didn't know what the code was. Gong Yi didn't mention it to himself at first, anyway. The Aruma who went in must have been I know, but the moment he turned his head, he found a skeleton lying beside him. At this time, the light on the opposite side was flashing more and more frequently, which made Mayer have some doubts, why the light is good or bad, why the flashing frequency suddenly is so high. It is a hint that he has been looking for Aruma and Gong Yi. I still want to let the voice from the place where I go to die keeps lingering in Mayer's ears. It can be said that it is a kind of forbearance, and it seems to be a mouth wrapped with tape. At that time, Mayer's footsteps suddenly stopped, and it was better to be vigilant at this time anyway. Order to avoid any problems. The sound of dripping water from the side also attracted Mayer's attention, but after deducting the money, the faint light on the devil's sword illuminated it, and found that it was not the legendary mountain Izumi water. It's just a few degrees. And there are no corpses nearby, except the skull I saw just now. The situation seems to have developed into a state that I can't control, and I don't know where Aruma and Gong Yi have gone. I'm afraid I won't be able to find the 2 of them for a while. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Read the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 playmates, find 99 novels and LT. Please keep the collection this paragraph, otherwise block the collection of IP. Chapter 1117. Follow. At this time, Lan Ying had just come in, and the whole person was walking in this place cautiously, for fear of accidentally bumping into something. After just passing a corner, I saw an incomparably huge, pus-like thing sitting in front of me, but the other party was motionless, so I didn't even think about turning my head and left, but then a dragon suddenly made an old voice. If you guessed correctly, your real body should be one of the 7 ancient weapons. After hearing this, Lan Ying suddenly stopped the steps under her feet, and then turned to look at a dragon sitting there. Who would have thought that at this time, the dragon would actually turn into a man, and the body exuded a black mist, and it's not hard to see that he's definitely not a good person. But who can I ask for help in this place? So I have no choice but to look around some places, trying to find if there is I can rely on, but I found that there is a corner that seems to have a person in that place hiding. This is Lan Ying's eyes turning, trying to use that person to elicit the real purpose of the man in black. After all, if he didn't have any needs and purposes, he wouldn't ask what his real body was in this place. Once the 2 of them were going to take them away, things would be bad. Gong Yi would use. What kind of weapon is he half-handed? And at this time, Mayer and Aluma have all been lost, so he can't just stay there at this moment. Yes and no. At this time, the man laughed suddenly, and he couldn't tell. His voice was actually a little more pleasant. Does this person have any tendency to be abused? I didn't expect you to be as stubborn as before. If you remember your previous life, I don't know if you can follow them and continue to be a pirate at sea. You have to know that you have a very serious mission. When your mother died, you didn't have time to tell him the truth. Now it's better to let me help you remember all of this, anyway. Lan Yu, you're just for this. If you can get your hands, you can say it's a matter of course now. No wonder he has been inquiring about you all this time. The news, since you let him go that time, he has no intention of letting you go. After hearing this, Lan Ying, I still know this. I still know what my father looks like best, but everyone has already let go, and I can go back and regret it, and it was true that time, help myself to offset it, or else in the future, there will be guilt. He is his father, so he should repay her for her kindness of upbringing. The rest of him can be regarded as a little use value, and Gong Yi has made himself clear before. Well, there is no longer any matter of interest between the two people. If he is asking himself if he can make some transactions, he just needs to refuse him decisively. All the people are behind him to support him, so what is there to be afraid of? People seem to have noticed that Lan Ying's high spirits. Rising up, he quickly suppressed it, as if he was afraid that he would suddenly become happy, which also turned into doubt, but Lan Ying didn't say it, as if he didn't realize this. He continued to look stupidly in front of him. But this man didn't care where he was looking. He quickly stretched out his hand, and there was something like a hammer that flew directly in his direction. Could it be that he has any special ability that he didn't notice? I didn't reveal any of them when I first entered here, so I didn't quite understand it, but it doesn't matter. Things have developed to the point where they are today. What's the use of ordinary concessions? But the man just smiled. Then he took the hammer and walked closer and closer to him. Suddenly, in the light, Lan Ying saw his face. How could this face be so similar to Lan Yuxian? What twin brother? At this time, the man also realized that there was a ray of light on his face, and in the shadow that was quickly withdrawn, he did not move towards Lan Ying anymore. But the other party just covered his face and didn't reveal any news. If you don't reveal your true identity, I won't reveal any news to you, anyway. What is my true body? I think you should know best. If you and Lan Yuxian grow up, if it is so similar, I am afraid you should be one of them. Not much to say, you can understand it in your own heart. Chapter 1118. Strange People, Second More. After saying this, Lan Ying turned her head and left and walked towards the small corner just now. As expected, Bobo was lying in this place. Kabuto turned around. Everyone was attracted when I came in. I found that the culprit was only hiding in a path next to the cave, and did not dare to go inside. At this moment, Lan Ying couldn't help crying. She took a step forward and picked her up from the ground. At this moment, the man rushed out, and then pointed the hammer in his hand directly at Lan Ying in front of him. At this time, Lan Ying naturally didn't dare to move. He could already tell when he heard the footsteps. Who is the real culprit? But these things are really beyond his own impression and you. I didn't expect him to be so decisive. It seems that he has nothing to do with Lan Yuxian, but at this time the other party told a shocking secret. We are actually one of the 7 ancient weapons, but I hope you can take a good look at yourself. What is the difference between you and us? You are the leader of the 7 ancient artifacts. Otherwise Lan Yuxian would not be able to after chasing you for so long. The reason why you look like him is because the artifact has no face. He will copy the first person he sees. Your face is just a woman who helped deliver the baby. After hearing this, Lan Ying's footsteps stopped for a while, and she turned to look over there. At this time, Bobo in his arms also opened his eyes and cheered up. He didn't expect that there would be a roadblock in this place. It seemed that he should take a look at what he looked like. But when he saw his face, Bobo couldn't help but be shocked and shrank. Should he not be outside in his arms? At this time Lan Ying just stared at the person in front of him. The man smiled lightly, thinking that it was a compromise again, so he reached out his hand and wanted to take her away with him. That looked very similar to Lan Yuxian, and quickly swung a fist up. It was what he deserved, and doing such a thing back then had already brought a comfortable blow to his heart. I didn't expect that he would dare to come back to this place now. It seems that he did something wrong and made him angry, but Lan Ying forgot that this person was not Lan Yuxian from the beginning. The man in black was dodging with the hammer one after another. I have to say that this little strength is quite strong, and the person who is one of the 7 ancient weapons is really not an ordinary person. But for him, it can naturally suppress him, but you must know that the rating is still in this position. Lan Ying is the most powerful one of the 7 weapons. And he can only be regarded as the 3rd and 4th, the level of the middle reaches. As for the second child, he has not yet appeared, so he was just sent to suppress him. As for how much he can suppress, what is the last one such feedback? Of course, I will not know it in this place. I really didn't expect that I would be kind enough to ask you to go back, but you treated me like this. You must know that if the weapon cannot be returned to the scabbard within a short period of time, I am afraid there will be problems. It's my business whether I can return or not, and it has nothing to do with you. I hope you leave this place quickly and don't harm people again. Look at some tragic scenes in this cave. If you didn't make it, I really do and think so. Believe it. The corpse just now and the liquid dripping from the stone milk, aren't they all bloody scenes? Who else in this cave can do this except him? The man in black was stunned. Then he laughed, as if he thought what Lan Ying said was a joke. Are you sure I did this thing? If you have the memory of your previous life, you will know that you and your father are both carved out of the same mold. Those murderous natures are wiped in your blood. You can't get rid of it, only when you really see that kind of vigorous scene, your instinct will be stimulated. It's just a matter of time, you can wait. After hearing this, Lan Ying shook her whole body, but she didn't dare to do anything. Maybe what he said was true. Bo suddenly held Lan Ying's hand, and then screamed and rushed up. Bobo in the form of a fox is actually quite shocking. After all, the momentum was still there when he rushed. At this time, the man in black saw Bobo, and his face was not as stiff. Maybe he didn't expect this little fox to follow him to such a place, but what's the matter? It wasn't that I had to report to him, why did I have to tell him? At this time, the man in black, after saying good things twice, disappeared directly in front of his eyes. Everyone was confused, including the one who stayed in the air. Bobo. Chapter 1119. Dangerous. The man just disappeared out of thin air, as if the world had evaporated without a trace. Let's go, why bother with him? It's not a good person at first glance. We might as well go back to find Gongyi and Aruma when we have time, and we don't know where they are now. Meyer also sneaked in just now, and now I think the most worrying and comforting thing is after all, he is the inheritor of this place. If there is any problem, he will definitely be the first to kill. After hearing this, Lan Ying's eyes dimmed, but she still followed Bobo's pace and left. I didn't expect him to be quite powerful after the transformation, but why did he suddenly change from his appearance just now? It was trembling in the small corner. Could it be that the man really had some kind of coercion? But then Bobo's reaction was not too big. It's normal, if he was really scared, he would jump at him the first time he saw him. I came here to ask for help, how could I have encountered such a situation, and I will see it later. After protecting him, he dared to take action. Did he experience something just now? So Lan Ying asked him to inquire about it. At this time, Bobo's eyes dimmed for a while, saying that a person had come over just now, and she had the same face as her. At this time, Lan Ying couldn't help but be shocked. How could someone with the same face as herself? He stayed outside all the time, never came in, but because of his reckless behavior just now, he had to involve himself in it. But at this time, the sudden blow made me fall into contemplation. Will other companions who come in will also encounter such a situation? If so, I should choose to prevent it. Otherwise, if there is a problem, I must also borne by oneself. Don't think about what happened just now. Maybe he just threatened you. How could someone like him be one of the 7 ancient weapons? After hearing this, Lan Ying glanced. Why, she never doubted that the other party might not be the so-called ancient artifact at all, but a fake, maybe because the preconceived notions were too strong, plus this blow, it was so sudden that I had time to react. I hope what you said is right. I saw that there was some contact between him and me, mainly because the incident of Lan Yuxian hit me a lot. I thought we would be able to live for a while after letting him go. The peaceful life of a pirate, who would have thought that he would still be chasing after him? Bobo stepped forward and patted Lan Ying on the shoulder. If it wasn't for what Lan Yuxian did that time, it's very likely that the village chief would never accept Gong Yi in his entire life. His face was so confusing. It is also a good thing, mainly because the blow to Lan Ying may be too big, but at the same time, several people are accompanying her attentively. Wasn't Aruma the same before? She was walking around with Bobo and Lan Ying. At this moment, Lan Ying dragged Bob's thoughts back, and the two of them quickly ran in the cave. At this time, Bobo, who didn't have time to transform back into the little fox, suddenly shook his body and turned into a fluffy little fox. Lan Ying quickly grabbed him, and then climbed over a huge rock block to hide behind. One person and one fox are facing each other face to face like this. No one knows what will appear in the next second. But the sound of footsteps just now was definitely not fake. It was like a giant passing through the field in front of him, feeling that if he hadn't run fast, he might be trampled into mud in the next second. Just after the voice got a little further away, Lan Ying stuck her head out, only to find that the thing had never gone far. It had been wandering around, and even planned to sit down here. At this time Lan Ying couldn't help but look at it. He glanced at the little fox in his arms, hoping he could help come up with an idea. But the other party is just hesitating and unwilling to go out to do anything. I must be afraid of such a giant Bobo. After finishing it, he has been there. What a sensitive fox. If he is caught, the consequences will be very serious. Tragic. Therefore, the two of them are huddled in this place, waiting for the rescue of others, and I don't know when they will be able to find this place. Before that, the most important thing for the two of them to do is protect themselves. How long do you say they will be able to get here? I don't know. The smell of dampness in this place is a bit serious. I can't tell where the breath of Aruma and Gong Yi are, but Mayor seems to be getting closer and closer to us. Will it be? He became this monster's mouthful of Chinese food. At this time, Lan Ying's face suddenly stiffened, and she almost forgot that she came this time to drag him back. Chapter 1120, Dodge. If he runs away now, there is no telling when he will be able to find her next time. This Shandong is quite big. If he and Gong Yi meet first, I am afraid that Gong Yi will blame him again after they come out. So at this time, Lan Ying clenched the Bobo in her hand, and the other party gently rubbed her hand, as if to comfort her emotions. It was only Lan Ying who realized that she seemed to be holding it a little tight, and quickly when he released his hand, he heard rapid footsteps. As expected, after passing this corner, Mayor really appeared in this place. The parrot stayed by the side. Bobo's mouth did not let him make a sound. If he spoke, neither of the two would be able to leave today. If there is no sound, maybe it can save his life. When Mayor arrived near this place, Lan Ying, at a speed that could not cover his ears, passed Mayor directly to him before the person found his location. At this time, the other party was still confused. I thought that something had hit my entire face, and there was no other expression other than panic. After seeing this expression, Lan Ying couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. At this time, Mayor also found out that it was Lan Ying and Bobo. Just take care of yourself. If he comes in together, maybe some other things will become not so good. After all, I didn't decide this matter alone, and I also felt a little weird in this cave. If I say that I have something to do with this Shandong, it must be an inevitable thing. After all, in this place some breaths are revealed. The attributes that make Mayor feel very much should be some places where he has lived before. Then the existence of this village can be identified, and what kind of development will be next is uncertain. At this time, the huge monster was still sitting on the rock beside it. It had already looked at the demon sword in Mayor's hand, and then pointed at the big monster beside it. It was only then that Mayer looked away. Now this monster's very attributes should be seen in the documents in the village when I was a child, so I made a gesture with Lanying, indicating that I should have known him. The images in the book are not particularly clear, at least to allow myself to judge what kind of creature this is. This thing has a strong attack power, and it is the guardian beast of this place. It can be said that as long as someone invades, it will appear from this place. It seems that this time his group should be regarded as an intruder, so Lu Guang patted Lanying's hand and signaled him not to disturb him. It should be no problem to meet him as a descendant of this place. If the other party wants to do something to him and wants to fight, he must always consider the bloodline inherited from his body. Look here. After hearing this, that monster turned its head around, and Lanying and Mayer were both stunned when it came over. They didn't expect the real face to be like this. When they heard his heavy footsteps, they thought it was a monster with no face at all. But the increase in holdings is not like this, that the monster has the face of a handsome man, and there is no muscle on his body that makes people feel lacking, but his head does not match this body. Mei couldn't help shrinking when he saw this scene. This face belonged to his father. Could there be something wrong with the people in this place? How could he live on the monster in such an identity? He spoke, but found that this matter had no substance, and he was constantly raising his hand to attack himself. At this time, Lanying couldn't help but hesitate when she saw this scene, and quickly reached out and dragged the person back. What do you think? He doesn't know you anymore. If you keep going like this, none of us can escape from here. Gongyi and Aruma are still there. Inside, I didn't find them on the way here. Personally, if the delay in this place is longer, I am afraid that the two of them will not be saved. After hearing this, he continued to want to go. Meyer, who had studied and understood this point, had to give up. He looked back reluctantly. After all, such an appearance was too tempting. It was his father's face, but why is it on the body of a monster? Could it be said that he would also become like this? After thinking of this, Meyer couldn't help but fight a cold war. Lanying naturally couldn't understand what he was thinking in his heart, so he had to give. There was a shudder on his head, and he asked him to come quickly to help, but it was still difficult to find the two of them.